The air inside the church feels frozen in place. A trembling man insists that the statue look directly at him. He swears he saw its chest rise, barely a millimeter. It shouldn't be possible. No one believes him, but he insists something awakened inside the sanctuary, something ancient, something that feels alive. Why do so many claim that the infant of Prague only awakens at Christmas? Welcome to the Lamp Files, where we explore what lives between faith, myth, and the unexplainable. If you feel that certain mysteries aren't just told, but watch you, like, subscribe, and activate the bell. Something is approaching, and you'll want to be here when the light reveals what hides beneath it. What you will hear blends recorded history, testimonies, and shadows. It claims no truths. You decide what to believe. Here begins the mystery of the infant Jesus of Prague. They say some images are just wood, but others seem to hold a pulse. The infant Jesus of Prague is one of them. Around it gather centuries of whispers, impossible healings, and movements no one should witness. And every December, when Prague grows cold, they say it awakens. Protective, miraculous, and unsettling. The history of the infant Jesus of Prague. The story begins in Spain in the 16th century. In a workshop lit by a narrow window, an artisan carves a small figure, the infant Jesus blessing with his right hand and holding a globus cruciger with his left. It is not meant for fame. It is a domestic image intended for private prayer in a small chapel or oratory. Its serene face conveys devotion, not power. Although no miracles surround its origin, in a few decades, that simplicity will become the starting point of a story that will cross borders. Almost a century after its creation, in the year 1628, Princess Polixiana Lobkowicz donates the image to the disc-housed Carmelites of Prague. Letters and chronicles record the scene. She warns the friars with a phrase that will remain in collective memory. Honor this infant Jesus greatly, and nothing will be lacking to you. At that moment, the statue is still seen as a symbol of domestic devotion. Its arrival marks the beginning of its public history. A few years or decades later, during the turbulent wars and looting of the 17th century, the chapel suffers damage. During the assaults, the little figure falls and loses its hands. The statue remains broken and without veneration for some time, a period of abandonment that may last years, even a generation, depending on the records. The image is left among debris and dust, a silent witness to a violent era. Years after the abandonment, a friar named Cyril finds the statue and returns it to a small chapel. According to his notes and later chronicles, he claims to have heard a childlike voice saying, "Give me back my hands, and I will bless you." Whether this occurred in the late 17th century or early 18th, depending on oral sources, it marks the moment when the figure stops being just an object and becomes a story. Shortly after Father Cyril's claim, perhaps years or a generation later, an anonymous person arrives offering to repair the statue. He restores the hands without asking for reward and disappears. From that moment on, throughout the 18th century and beyond, accounts of favors, cures, and devotion multiply. The Carmelites dress the image in rich mantles and symbolically crown it in acts of devotion. Over time, the devotion spreads beyond Bohemia, through Europe, its colonies, and eventually distant continents. The devotion becomes institutional. Throughout the 20th century, the statue maintains its status. It receives offerings, pilgrimages, and ecclesiastical attention. Finally, in 2009, it receives a formal crown by papal decree, a gesture that consecrates its importance within Catholic tradition. This institutional layer confirms what is documented: origin, donation, damage, and restoration. But religious archives and popular testimonies begin to diverge. The official story is clear, but reports of inexplicable phenomena, voices, movements, and healings remain outside formal records. Historical is written on paper. The inexplicable keeps breaking the margins of the record. Miracles no one wanted to write down. It happens in 1934. A woman in her 40s, Klara Vondrashkova, enters the church on a gray winter morning. She has been visiting the sanctuary for weeks because she feels that something is calling her. As she adjusts her simple amateur camera, she sees a slight movement in her peripheral vision. The infant Jesus inclines his head toward her. No wind, no one else around. When she develops the photos, the statue looks identical in every shot. Yet Klara insists it wasn't a misperception. She says it looked at her. Church authorities record her testimony, but never publish it. In the late 1940s, a Czech soldier returns from war with deep wounds on his cheek and temple. Doctors tell him recovery will be slow and he will remain disfigured. One night, unable to sleep from the pain, he enters the chapel of the Infant Jesus of Prague. He stays until dawn in absolute silence. When he wakes, the damaged skin is smooth, closed, without crusts or inflammation. The medical report describes the healing as anatomically improbable, and an internal investigation begins, but is never released to the public. The soldier claims that just before fainting from exhaustion, he saw the statue move its hand toward his face. Doctors find no explanation and prefer to leave the case without conclusions. In Christmas Eve 1985, the church is full. Everything proceeds normally until a murmur spreads through the pews. Several people, at least 7 according to collected statements, claim to have seen the infant Jesus blink. Not a light reflection, not an illusion, a slow, deliberate movement. Some say the eyes briefly changed direction. The priest tries to continue, but the atmosphere hangs thick as if everyone is waiting for something else to happen. The diocese interviews witnesses, but the report closes with no visual evidence found. Off the record, some parishioners say the statue only blinks when danger is near. Something more unsettling has begun in recent years. The phenomena increase every December. Witnesses speak of sudden temperature changes in the chapel, candles extinguishing without airflow, shadows that do not correspond to real light. Some say the statue grows heavier when moved. Others claim it feels warmer to the touch during winter nights. None of these events appear in official documents. None have accepted explanations. And yet, they happen every year. What awakens in winter, and why does it always seem to wait until someone notices? The official records end here. But from this point on, something changes, because the phenomena are no longer confined to the sanctuary. They no longer depend on a single statue. Since the early 2000s, the Infant of Prague begins to manifest far from Prague, in homes, replicas, ordinary families. And it does so in a disturbing way, as if it were following those who stare at it for too long. If the original never moved from its pedestal, why do so many claim that the child began to appear in other places?
The voices fade, the files are sealed, but one lamp remains lit. Subscribe to the channel so this light never goes out. Because as long as someone listens, the mystery lives on.